Vista for our parents' 35th wedding anniversary celebration. Of all the upscale restaurants in the city, he'd picked the flagship location of my restaurant chain. Not that he knew that, of course. To Mike, I was still his little sister Lisa who worked in food service. His dismissive way of describing what he assumed was a waitressing job or maybe something in catering. I wanted somewhere really special for Mom and Dad, he'd announced when making the reservation 2 weeks ago. Somewhere that shows how much we appreciate them. I know it's expensive, Lisa, but don't worry about your portion. I've got this covered. Don't worry about my portion. As if I couldn't afford to split a dinner bill at my own restaurant. Mike had always been like this, ever since we were kids. 5 years older, perpetually convinced that his success as a regional sales manager for a medical device company made him the family's financial authority. He'd graduated college, gotten married, bought a house in the suburbs, and somehow decided this meant he was responsible for managing everyone else's life choices. Lisa's still figuring things out, he'd tell people as if I were 22 instead of 31. She's got time to find her path. My path, apparently, was a mystery to him despite being perfectly clear to anyone who bothered to look. But Mike had never bothered to look. He'd seen me working in restaurants during college and somehow frozen that image in his mind, unable to update it even as years passed and circumstances changed dramatically. The reservation was for 6:30 on a Saturday night, prime time at Bella Vista. I'd arrived early and was already seated when the family started filtering in. Mom and Dad looked elegant in their anniversary best. Dad in the navy suit he saved for special occasions, Mom in a dress she'd probably bought specifically for tonight. Mike's wife Jennifer had on something expensive-looking with designer accessories that she kept adjusting self-consciously. And Mike himself wore his success like a cologne, strong and impossible to ignore. "Lisa," Mom had exclaimed, giving me a tight hug. "You look lovely, sweetheart." I'd chosen a simple black dress and understated jewelry, nothing flashy. I'd learned years ago that dressing too expensively around my family led to uncomfortable questions about where I got the money. It was easier to blend in and let them maintain their assumptions. "This place is incredible," Jennifer whispered to me as we sat down, her eyes wide as she took in the restaurant's elegant interior. Mike said it's one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. She wasn't wrong. Bella Vista had taken 3 years to develop, from finding the perfect location to hiring the head chef to designing every detail of the interior. The result was exactly what I'd envisioned, sophisticated without being pretentious, elegant without being stuffy. The kind of place that felt special for anniversaries and celebrations, but still warm and welcoming. "It's very nice," I agreed, scanning the familiar dining room. I could see Marcus, the general manager, moving between tables with his usual quiet efficiency. He'd spotted me when I arrived and given me the subtle nod we'd agreed on years ago, acknowledgement without drawing attention. Mike was studying the menu with the intensity of someone trying to calculate exactly how much this dinner was going to cost him. "Jesus," he muttered under his breath. $48 for salmon? "It's their anniversary, honey," Jennifer reminded him quietly. "And you said we wanted somewhere special." I know," Mike replied, still frowning at the prices. "It's just, this is more than some people make in a day." He glanced at me when he said it and I knew exactly what he was thinking. This is more than Lisa probably makes in a day. Maybe more than she makes in 2 days. Dad was looking around the restaurant with genuine appreciation. "This is beautiful, Mike. Really beautiful. Your mother and I haven't been somewhere this fancy in years." "Well, you deserve it," Mike replied, puffing up slightly at the praise. 35 years of marriage is a big deal. Only the best for you too." The server arrived to take our drink orders and I recognized him immediately. David had been working at Bella Vista for 2 years now, ever since graduating from hospitality school. He was professional, knowledgeable, and completely dedicated to providing excellent service. "Good evening," he said with a warm smile. "Welcome to Bella Vista. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Mike ordered wine for the table, not the most expensive option but not the cheapest either. A middle ground choice that would seem generous without breaking his budget. David nodded approvingly at the selection, which seemed to please Mike. "Excellent choice, sir," David said. "I'll be right back with that." As he walked away, Mike leaned back in his chair with satisfaction. "This is how you celebrate an anniversary," he announced. "None of that chain restaurant nonsense. Real food, real atmosphere, real service." Real service. If only he knew how much thought had gone into training the staff to provide exactly that level of excellence. The conversation over appetizers followed predictable patterns. Mike talked about his recent promotion, his new company car, and the vacation he and Jennifer were planning to Hawaii. Jennifer shared updates about their house renovation and her part-time job at a boutique. Mom and Dad beamed at their successful son and daughter-in-law, asking all the right questions and making all the appropriate impressed noises. When they turned to me, the energy shifted noticeably. "So Lisa," Dad said, "how's work going?" "Still in the restaurant business." "The restaurant business?" As if it were some kind of temporary phase I was going through. "Yes," I replied simply. "Still in restaurants." Mike nodded approvingly. "There's nothing wrong with food service," he said in the tone of someone being deliberately charitable. "It's honest work. And Lisa's always been good with people." Good with people. The kind of thing you say about someone whose career you don't quite understand but want to be supportive of anyway. "Are you still at that place downtown?" Mom asked. "The one you mentioned last Christmas?" "I work at several places," I said, which was true in a way they wouldn't understand. Mike's eyebrows went up. "Several places? Lisa, are you working multiple jobs? Because if money's tight, you know Jennifer and I could help you out. Maybe help you find something more stable." Something more stable. Like his sales job, presumably. Something with regular hours, benefits, and a clear hierarchy that would make sense to him. "I'm doing fine," I assured him. "But thank you. It's just," Mike continued, warming to his theme, "you're 31 now. At some point you need to think about your future. Career advancement, retirement savings, health insurance. All that adult stuff." Because apparently working in restaurants wasn't adult enough for his standards. Jennifer was looking around the dining room again, her expression slightly anxious. "This really is an expensive place," she whispered to Mike. "Are you sure about this?" Mike waved her concern away, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "It's fine. It's their anniversary." But I could tell it wasn't fine. I could see him doing mental calculations, probably figuring out exactly how much this dinner was going to set him back and how long it would take to recover financially. The irony was painful. My brother was stressed about paying for dinner at a restaurant that generated enough profit to cover his entire annual salary in less than 2 weeks. The entrees arrived, and David performed his usual impeccable service, checking that everything met our expectations and ensuring our water glasses never went empty. Mike seemed impressed despite himself. "This is really good service," he admitted to Jennifer. "You can tell this is a high-class establishment." High-class establishment. The phrase pleased me more than it probably should have. It was during the main course that things took a sharper turn. Mike had been drinking steadily throughout the dinner, not enough to be drunk, but enough to lower his usual filters. And Mike with lowered filters was Mike at his most patronizing. "You know, Lisa," he said, cutting into his steak with deliberate precision, "I've been thinking about your situation." "My situation. Here we go. I think I might be able to help you out," he continued. "There's a girl in my office, Amanda, who used to manage restaurants before she got into medical device sales. She says there are lots of opportunities for restaurant people to transition into other industries." Other industries. Because restaurant work was apparently something you needed to transition out of, like a disease you recovered from. "The key," Mike went on, "is to position your experience the right way. Customer service, crisis management, working under pressure. Those are all transferable skills." Transferable skills. He was talking about my career like I was unemployed and needed help finding work. "Mike," Mom said gently, "maybe Lisa's happy doing what she's doing." "Sure, she might be happy," Mike agreed, "but happiness doesn't pay the bills. And it doesn't set you up for a secure future." He turned to me, his expression earnest in the way that meant he was about to deliver what he considered crucial life advice. "Lisa, I love you and I want what's best for you. But look around." He gestured at the elegant restaurants surrounding us. "This is what success looks like. This is what you get when you make smart career choices." The irony was so thick I could practically taste it. "Find somewhere you can actually afford," he continued, his voice getting louder as the wine kicked in. "I mean, I know I said I'd cover tonight, but honestly, Lisa, places like this aren't really for people in your situation." The words hung in the air like expensive perfume. Other diners were starting to glance over, probably wondering what was happening at our table. Mom looked mortified, Mike, that's not necessary. I'm not being mean, Mike protested. I'm being realistic. Lisa needs to understand that there are different levels in life. Some people can afford places like this regularly and some people can't. That's just how it is. Dad was looking uncomfortable now. Son, maybe we should. No, Dad, this is important, Mike interrupted. Someone needs to tell Lisa these things. She's living in some kind of fantasy where she thinks working in restaurants is going to lead to, what? Owning them someday. He laughed at his own joke, apparently finding the idea of me owning restaurants genuinely amusing. This is more than you make in a year, Mom added, though her voice was quieter, as if she was trying to soften the blow while still supporting her successful son's assessment of the situation. The entire dining room seemed to quiet around our table. I could feel other diners' eyes on us, probably wondering why this well-dressed family was having what appeared to be a financial intervention in the middle of an upscale restaurant. I looked at my family's faces. Mike's expression was earnest, convinced he was delivering necessary tough love. Jennifer looked embarrassed but was clearly not going to contradict her husband. Mom and Dad seemed caught between wanting to support their successful son and feeling uncomfortable with his approach. They were all waiting for my response, probably expecting tears or anger or grateful acknowledgement that they were right to be concerned about my situation. Instead, I nodded calmly and said, "Understood." The simple agreement seemed to deflate some of the tension Mike had been building. He'd clearly been prepared for pushback, maybe even hoping for some drama that would prove his point about my emotional immaturity or inability to face reality. "Good," he said, though he looked slightly confused by my calm response. "That's good, Lisa. That's mature." Because agreeing with his assessment of my failures was apparently evidence of personal growth. Jennifer was adjusting her napkin nervously. "Maybe we should talk about something else," she suggested. "It's Mom and Dad's anniversary after all." "You're right," Mike agreed. "I just want Lisa to understand that family looks out for each other. That's what tonight is about, celebrating success and supporting each other through challenges." Supporting each other through challenges. He saw himself as the successful family member helping his struggling sister understand reality. The protector, the provider, the one with enough perspective to see things clearly. I was about to respond when I noticed movement at the edge of my vision. Marcus, the general manager, was approaching our table with purposeful steps. I'd worked with Marcus for 5 years now, ever since opening the second Bella Vista location. He was absolutely professional, completely devoted to the restaurant's success, and had an uncanny ability to handle any situation with grace. He was also walking directly toward our table with an expression that suggested he needed to speak with me about something important. My family noticed him coming. Mike straightened up, probably assuming the manager was approaching to compliment him on his choice of restaurant or to ensure everything was satisfactory with our anniversary celebration. Jennifer smoothed her hair, preparing to receive what she no doubt expected would be recognition of their table's obvious importance. Marcus reached our table and smiled politely at everyone before turning his attention directly to me. "Chef's compliments to the owner, Ms. Chin," he began, his voice carrying clearly across our section of the dining room. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Mike's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Jennifer's wine glass tilted dangerously in her suddenly slack grip. Mom's eyes went wide and Dad's mouth opened slightly in shock. Marcus continued, apparently oblivious to the family drama he'd just detonated. "I apologize for interrupting your family dinner, but Chef Rodriguez wanted me to ask about tomorrow's menu tasting for the new location. Also, the food critic from Metropolitan Magazine is here for the review. She's at table 12 if you'd like to greet her personally." He paused, glancing around the table with professional courtesy. "And the quarterly profit reports are ready for your review whenever convenient. We're up 18% from last quarter across all locations." All locations. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "I hope everyone is enjoying their anniversary celebration," Marcus added with a warm smile. "Please let me know if there's anything else you need." After he walked away, the silence at our table was deafening. I could practically hear my family's minds racing, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The struggling restaurant worker they'd been pitying and offering career advice to was apparently the owner of Bella Vista. Not just this location but multiple locations. Multiple profitable locations. Mike found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "Owner. Yes, I replied simply. Of this restaurant? This one and several others. Jennifer was staring at me like I'd just performed a magic trick. Lisa, you own restaurants? I own a restaurant group, I clarified. Bella Vista is the flagship, but there are 6 locations now. Mom was looking around the elegant dining room with new eyes, seeing everything differently now that she understood it belonged to me. Lisa, honey, how long have you? When did you? I opened the first Bella Vista 7 years ago, I explained. The others followed as the concept proved successful. Dad was doing calculations in his head, I could tell. Lisa, if you own 6 restaurants, what does that? What kind of business are we talking about? Last year the restaurant group generated about $32 million in revenue, I said calmly. The number hit the table like a physical force. Mike's face went completely pale. Jennifer made a small choking sound. Mom and Dad exchanged glances of pure shock. 32 million, Mike repeated slowly as if testing whether the words made sense in that order. Revenue, not profit, I clarified. But yes, it's been a successful venture. Marcus appeared again, this time carrying a leather portfolio and looking slightly apologetic. Miss Chen, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but the investors from Chicago are confirmed for Tuesday's meeting about the franchise expansion. They're particularly interested in the profit margins from the suburban locations. He set the portfolio next to my plate. Also, Food and Wine wants to schedule the photo shoot for the Rising Restaurant Empires feature. Should I have them coordinate with your assistant? Food and Wine. The phrase seemed to hang in the air above our table like an expensive chandelier. After Marcus left, Mike was the first to speak, though his voice was barely audible. Lisa, you're being featured in Food and Wine magazine? It's just a small piece about successful restaurant concepts, I replied. Nothing major. Nothing major? Jennifer echoed. Lisa, Food and Wine is huge. That's national recognition. Kevin was scrolling through his phone frantically. Oh my God, Lisa, I'm looking you up online. Chin Restaurant Group, 6 locations and growing. There's a whole article here about your expansion plans. He continued reading from his screen. Lisa Chen, 31, has built one of the city's most successful independent restaurant groups. Lisa, this article says you started with a single location and built it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. The business has grown over time, I agreed. Mom was still processing everything, her expression cycling between shock, pride, and what looked like embarrassment. Lisa, why didn't you tell us? All this time we thought you were. You thought I was what? I asked gently. Struggling, she admitted quietly. We thought you were working for other people, maybe struggling to make ends meet. Mike was staring at the leather portfolio Marcus had left. What's in there? Probably financial reports, I said. Monthly profit and loss statements, expansion projections, investor communications. Investor communications, Mike repeated. Lisa, you have investors? Several. The expansion into suburban markets required additional capital. Dad leaned forward, his businessman instincts kicking in despite his shock. Lisa, what are your profit margins like? In the restaurant business, I mean. They vary by location and season, but we maintain healthy margins across all properties. The key is controlling costs while maintaining quality. The professional tone of my response seemed to drive home the reality that I wasn't just someone who happened to own restaurants. I was someone who understood the business inside and out, someone who spoke the language of profit margins and investor relations and market expansion. I need to ask, Mike said, his voice carefully controlled, what you're actually worth. Personally. Because I've been sitting here talking about career advancement and financial security like I was some kind of authority, and now I find out you own a restaurant empire. Restaurant empire. The phrase would have seemed ridiculous an hour ago. Now it just sounded accurate. I'm comfortable, I replied, using the same phrase I always used when people asked about money. Comfortable. Mike pressed. Lisa, if your restaurants generate $32 million in revenue, comfortable doesn't really capture it, does it? I considered how much to share. The business has been good to me. But Mike wasn't satisfied with diplomatic answers anymore. Lisa, I need a number. Roughly. Because I need to understand how badly I've misread this situation. The desperation in his voice was painful to hear. This wasn't just curiosity. This was a man realizing that his entire understanding of his family dynamics had been completely wrong. My personal net worth is about 14 million, I said quietly. 14 million. The number seemed to suck all the air out of our section of the restaurant. Mike was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his half-finished steak. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Lisa, I don't know what to say. The things I said tonight, the way I've talked to you for years. I thought I was helping someone who needed guidance. I know, I replied gently. But you didn't need my guidance. You didn't need anyone's guidance. You built something incredible while I was lecturing you about career advancement. Jennifer was looking at me with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Lisa, when Mike talks about work, when he brags about his sales numbers and his promotions, you must think I think you're proud of your accomplishments, I said honestly. As you should be. But compared to what you've built, Mike said, my little regional sales territory seems pretty small. Success isn't a competition, Mike. You've built a good career that supports your family. That matters. Marcus appeared one final time, approaching with his usual professional courtesy but carrying what looked like a wine bottle. Miss Chin, with compliments from the sommelier. He noticed you were celebrating a family anniversary and wanted to offer something special from the reserve collection. He showed me the label, a bottle worth several $100s from our exclusive wine cellar. Also, I wanted to let you know that the restaurant critic's review is going very well. She seems particularly impressed with the service standards and the consistency across all course offerings. After he left, Dad picked up the expensive wine bottle and examined the label with something approaching reverence. Lisa, he said slowly, this wine probably costs more than most people spend on groceries in a month. The sommelier chose well, I agreed. And he gave it to us because you own the restaurant. He gave it to us because it's your anniversary and he wanted to make the evening special. But we all understood the real reason. The sommelier, like everyone else on the staff, knew exactly who I was and wanted to ensure my family received exceptional treatment. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Lisa, honey, can you help me understand something? I waited. All these years when we worried about you, when Mike offered to help you find stable work, when we assumed you were struggling, why didn't you tell us the truth? It was the question I'd been expecting for years, and the answer was both simple and complicated. Because you never asked what I actually did, I said carefully. You saw me working in restaurants and assumed that meant I was an employee, not an owner. You made assumptions about my situation and my success level, and I let you keep those assumptions. Mike was nodding slowly. We never asked the right questions. You asked if I was still in the restaurant business, but you never asked what my role was in that business. You assumed I was working for other people rather than building my own company. Jennifer was shaking her head in amazement. All those times Mike worried about your future, about your financial security. I knew you were trying to help, I said. I appreciated that you cared even if the help wasn't necessary. But Lisa, Dad said, surely you could see that we were misunderstanding your situation. Why not correct us? I considered how to explain this without sounding accusatory. Because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I was struggling. I wanted to know how you treated family members you perceived as less successful than you. The truth of that statement settled over the table like expensive tablecloth. They were realizing that their behavior toward me hadn't been based on love and concern alone. It had been based on their assumptions about hierarchy, about who was successful and who needed help, about who had the right to give advice and who was obligated to receive it. That's fair, Mike said quietly. And we failed that test, didn't we? You didn't fail anything, I replied. You were human. But yes, you treated me differently because you thought I was struggling. We were condescending, Jennifer added. God, Lisa, I'm so embarrassed about some of the things I've said to you over the years. The wine Marcus had brought was exceptional, and as we finished our anniversary dinner, the conversation gradually shifted. My family began asking different kinds of questions, not the worried, patronizing questions they'd been asking for years, but genuine questions about my business, my expansion plans, my challenges and successes. How did you know restaurants were the right business for you? Mom asked. I started working in them in college and fell in love with the hospitality industry. The challenge of creating experiences people remember, building teams that work together seamlessly, developing concepts that resonate with customers. It all appealed to me. And you saw a business opportunity, Dad added. I saw several business opportunities. The restaurant industry is incredibly competitive, but there's always room for concepts that deliver consistent quality and genuine hospitality. Mike was listening intently, his earlier embarrassment giving way to genuine curiosity about how I'd built the business. What was the hardest part? The first 2 years, I replied without hesitation. Learning to manage cash flow, finding the right staff, establishing systems that could scale. I made a lot of expensive mistakes. But you learned from them, Jennifer observed. Had to. In the restaurant business, mistakes are expensive and very visible. You learn quickly or you fail quickly. As we prepared to leave, Mike pulled me aside in the lobby. Lisa, I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for years of treating you like someone who needed my guidance instead of someone who had her own path figured out. Mike, you don't need to. Yes, I do, he interrupted. I've been a condescending ass to you. I've assumed things about your life and your success that were completely wrong. And I've offered you advice you didn't need from a position of authority I didn't actually have. I could see how much this admission was costing him. Mike had built his identity around being the successful older brother, the one who had it all figured out, the one who could help guide his younger sister through life's challenges. Learning that his sister was more successful than he was, that she'd built something remarkable while he was offering her career advice, had to be devastating to that self-image. I appreciate that, I said. But Mike, your success doesn't diminish just because mine is different than you thought. Doesn't it though? He asked. I mean, I've been bragging about my sales numbers and my company car to someone who owns 6 restaurants. Your sales numbers matter, I insisted. Your company car matters. Your success matters. It doesn't matter less just because my business happens to be larger. He nodded, but I could see he was still struggling to process everything. As we stood outside the restaurant saying our goodbyes, Mom hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, Lisa. I should have said that more often, and I should have said it based on understanding what you'd actually accomplished. Thank you, Mom. That means everything. One by one, they each said goodbye, and each goodbye felt different than the ones I'd received from them in years past. These weren't the careful, slightly worried goodbyes they gave to their struggling family member. These were the goodbyes you give to someone you respect and admire. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Mike. Lisa, would you have time for coffee this week? I want to learn about your business. Really learn, not just pretend to understand while I wait to give you advice I'm not qualified to give. I smiled and texted back. I'd love that. Maybe family dinners would be different from now on. Maybe they'd finally see me as I actually was rather than who they'd assumed I was. Maybe the next time we celebrated an anniversary, it would be a dinner between equals rather than a charity event disguised as a celebration. I was looking forward to finding out. 2 days later, Mike called with an update. Lisa, I told everyone at work about your restaurant group. I hope that's okay. I wanted people to know how incredible my sister is. For the first time in years, Mike was bragging about me instead of bragging to me. It was a small change, but it felt revolutionary. That's more than okay, I told him. Thank you. No thank you, he replied. For building something amazing and for being patient with a brother who took way too long to see it. Family dynamics I'd learned could change. It just took the right revelation at the right moment, preferably delivered by a professional general manager in front of a dining room full of witnesses. Sometimes the best revenge was simply letting people discover